My mother almost killed my son with severe allergies because I was exaggerating. Years later, she returns begging forgiveness. But when I discovered the truth about her psychiatric diagnosis, everything made sense. I'm 28 years old. I'm a single mother of a 5-year-old boy named Liam. And basically, I've spent my whole life dealing with a mother who never should have been one. But what happened like a year and a half ago with my son was the straw that broke the camel's back. I mean, it was the moment when I said no more. It's over. I guess I should start from the beginning so you understand why I completely cut contact with my own mother, because I know it sounds drastic. And believe me, it wasn't an easy decision. But when your child's safety is at stake, there's not much to think about. You know what I mean? My mom, Beatrice, is 56 now. And to be honest, she was always a complicated person. But everything got worse after my dad died when I was 8 years old. It was a car accident, super sudden. And obviously, it was devastating for everyone. But my mom never really recovered. Like, she got stuck in that pain and basically became a different person. I have a younger sister, Claire, who's 26 now. And since we were kids, it was super obvious that my mom preferred her. I don't know if it was because Claire was only 6 when Dad died and my mom felt she needed to protect her more, or simply because Claire was always quieter and more submissive, but I was definitely the problem child in her mind. And believe me, she made it known to me in 1,000 ways throughout my entire childhood. The thing is that my mom was never like abusive in the traditional sense, you know. She didn't hit me or anything like that, but she was emotionally very cold with me, like always criticizing everything I did, constantly comparing me to Claire, making me feel like I was never enough. I remember in school I got good grades, like A's and B's, and my mom barely looked at them. But if Claire got a B+, it was like she'd won the Nobel Prize or something. And it wasn't just grades. It was everything. The way I dressed, my friends, my interests. Literally everything I did was wrong in her opinion. Claire always tried to tell me it wasn't personal, that mom was depressed and didn't know how to handle it. But when you're a 10, 12, 15-year-old girl and your own mother makes you feel invisible, it's hard not to take it personally, you know? When I turned 18, I went to study at a university that was like 6 hours away, and honestly, it was the best thing I could do for my mental health. During those years, I barely talked to my mom. Like, I'd call her at Christmas and on her birthday, and that's it. And she never made any effort to visit me or keep in touch, which confirmed everything I already knew about our relationship. I got married when I was 23 to a guy who ended up being controlling and kind of emotionally abusive. Seems like I have a pattern with toxic people in my life. I don't know. And I had Liam when I was 23, almost 24. The pregnancy was complicated, and when Liam was born, we started noticing he had allergic reactions to a bunch of things. Like, it was a nightmare discovering everything he couldn't eat. By the time Liam was 2, we already knew he was allergic to 10 different things, and I'm talking about severe allergies. Not just he gets a rash, but like he needs an emergency EpiPen or he could die level of serious. He's allergic to dairy, eggs, peanuts, tree nuts, soy, wheat, fish, shellfish, sesame seeds, and mustard. Basically, his diet is super restrictive and I have to read every label of everything I buy. And when I say every label, I mean every label. Because these allergens are in places you wouldn't imagine. I decided to raise him vegan because it was easier to control what he ate and because it automatically eliminated a bunch of the allergens. And yes, I know there are people who have opinions about raising vegan kids, but when your child can literally die from eating the wrong thing, you do whatever's necessary to keep him safe. I divorced Liam's dad when he was 3 because the situation at a home had become unbearable. Like, the guy would get angry because I was exaggerating about Liam's allergies and said I was making him weak by being so careful. And there was an incident where he gave Liam something without checking the ingredients, and we ended up in the hospital. And I said, okay, that's it. This can't continue like this. The divorce was ugly. I'm not going to lie. But I got full custody of Liam and his dad has supervised visits every 2 weeks. Which is best for everyone considering he basically proved he can't be responsible with his own son's medical safety. After the divorce, I decided to move back to my hometown because I needed support, and I thought, well, it's been years. Maybe things with my mom have improved. Maybe now that I'm an adult and have my own child, we can have a different relationship. Spoiler alert, I was completely wrong. But at the time, I had hope. You know what I mean? Claire still lived in the city, worked in marketing or something like that, and when I told her I was coming back, she got super excited and told me mom would be happy too. that she'd changed, that she was going to therapy, which turned out to be a lie. But whatever. I got a small but nice apartment, found a decent job in administration, and reconnected with my mom and Claire. At first, everything seemed fine. Like, my mom was nice to Liam, she'd ask me how I was doing, she'd come visit us on weekends. But after like 2 months, I started noticing the same patterns as always. You know, the passive-aggressive comments, the way she criticized me for how I was raising Liam, the constant suggestions that I was doing everything wrong. She became obsessed with the food thing. Like, every time she came to my apartment, she'd make comments about how Liam looked thin, he's perfectly healthy, his pediatrician confirms it, or about how my extreme diet wasn't natural for a child. I explained to her 1,000 times about the allergies. I showed her the medical documentation. I gave her a printed list of everything Liam can't eat. But she acted like I was exaggerating or making things up. Things got worse when my mom started showing up unannounced. Like, she'd arrive at my apartment at 10 in the morning on a Saturday when I was still in pajamas and would get upset if I didn't let her in immediately. She started reorganizing my stuff when I wasn't looking, buying toys for Liam without asking me, which sounds nice, but it was her way of showing she knew better than me what my child needed, and basically tried to take control of situations in my own house. I asked Claire to talk to her because every time I tried to set boundaries, my mom would play the victim and say I was ungrateful, that she was just trying to help, that after everything she'd done for me, this is how I repaid her. Claire told me she'd try but couldn't promise anything, because you know how mom is when she gets something in her head, and I basically resigned myself to having to deal with this, because I needed family support and didn't have many other options. Then we get to the day that changed everything. And when I say everything, I mean absolutely everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I remember the day perfectly because it was the day I had an important meeting at work that I couldn't miss. My regular babysitter, Patricia, had told me she couldn't come because her mom was sick, and I was desperate looking for someone who could watch Liam for 3 hours. My mom offered, and I honestly hesitated a lot, but she swore she'd follow all my instructions, that she'd be careful with food, that she'd only give him the things I'd prepared. I gave her a list again, showed her where the EpiPen was, explained the symptoms of an allergic reaction, basically gave her a complete course in 20 minutes before leaving. The meeting lasted like 2.5 hours, and when I got out, I had like 15 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize, 3 voicemails from my mom, who sounded hysterical, and a text message from Claire that said, "Call now, Liam is in the hospital." I felt like my heart stopped, literally couldn't breathe. I grabbed my stuff and ran to the parking lot. Called my mom while driving. Yes, I know it's dangerous, but I was in total panic, and she couldn't even speak properly. She just cried and said, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." I got to the hospital in record time, probably broke like 5 traffic laws, but I didn't care. And when I entered the emergency room, I saw Liam on a gurney with an IV in his arm, his little face all swollen and red, and my mom sitting in a corner crying while Claire tried to calm her down. Turns out my mom decided that Liam needed real food, her exact words according to what she told me later, and gave him some cookies she had in her purse. Normal supermarket cookies that have literally like 5 of Liam's allergens, including dairy, eggs, and wheat. Liam told her he couldn't eat them, that mommy said those cookies were bad for him, but my mom told him not to be silly, that they were just cookies and that I was exaggerating about the allergies. He ate 2 cookies, he's 5 years old. He trusts adults. What was he going to do? And after like 10 minutes, he started having trouble breathing. He got a rash all over his body and started swelling up. My mom says she panicked and didn't know what to do, that she couldn't find the EpiPen. It was literally in my emergency bag that I'd left with her with a huge label that said emergency, and that she called 911. The paramedics arrived, gave him epinephrine, and took him to the hospital. When the doctors explained to me what had happened, I literally couldn't process the information. Like, my brain refused to accept that my own mother had endangered my son's life after I'd specifically told her 1,000 times how serious his allergies were. I went over to where she was and asked her, with the calmest voice I could manage, why she'd given him those cookies when I'd left food prepared for him. She started crying harder and saying that she just wanted Liam to eat something normal, that she raised 2 daughters and never had to deal with such ridiculous restrictions, that in her day kids ate everything and nothing happened. I told her to leave the hospital, that I didn't want to see her near Liam, and she told me I was being dramatic, that it had been an accident, that I was a bad daughter for treating her like this. Claire tried to mediate, but I told her no, not this time, that my son's safety was more important than my mom's feelings. Liam had to stay in the hospital that night for observation because the reaction had been quite severe, and I stayed with him obviously, sleeping in an uncomfortable chair next to his gurney, watching him breathe and thinking about everything that could have happened if the paramedics had taken 5 more minutes. The doctors told me we were lucky, that reactions like those can be fatal, and I could only think about how my mom almost killed my son because she decided she knew better than the doctors, better than me, better than all the scientific evidence about food allergies. After that incident, I told my mom she couldn't see Liam unsupervised ever again, that if she wanted to visit him, it had to be at my apartment with Patricia or me present, and that she had to absolutely respect all the rules about his food. She acted like she understood, but complained constantly to Claire that I was controlling and that I was using Liam as a weapon to punish her. About 3 months passed with supervised visits that were super tense, like she'd come, stay for an hour, barely talk to me, play with Liam for a bit, and leave. I thought at least we were maintaining some kind of family relationship, even if it was uncomfortable. But then something happened that finished destroying any possibility of reconciliation. It was a Sunday afternoon. Patricia was watching Liam in the living room, while I was in my room folding laundry or something, and my mom was in the kitchen with Claire making coffee. I didn't know they were there. They'd arrived early without notice, again, and they were talking in a low voice, but not low enough because I could hear them from my room. My mom was telling Claire that Liam was a burden, that I was raising him to be weak and dependent, that this whole allergy thing was probably psychosomatic because I'd convinced him he was sick, and that if I'd been a better mother, none of this would be happening, she said, and I remember this word for word because it's burned into my brain. Monica has always been dramatic and attention-seeking, and now she's using that boy to get sympathy. Honestly, I'm not surprised her marriage failed. I froze in my room with one of Liam's shirts in my hands, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach, like I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Claire tried to defend me, told my mom that wasn't fair, that Liam's allergies were real and documented, that I was doing the best I could, but my mom just laughed bitterly and said something like, "You always defend her, I don't know why. She's never appreciated anything I've done for you both." I waited for them to leave. Didn't say anything at that moment because Liam was there and I didn't want to make a scene in front of him. But that night, after putting Liam to bed, I called my mom and told her it was over, that I didn't want to see her again, that I wasn't going to allow someone who thought my son was a burden to be in his life. She at first tried to deny she'd said that, then said I'd misinterpreted, then admitted she said it but that she was frustrated and didn't mean it seriously, and finally ended up yelling at me that I was a horrible person, that I was keeping her away from her grandson for nothing, that I was going to regret this. I hung up on her and cried for like 2 hours straight, like I couldn't stop. It was a mixture of anger and sadness and relief from finally setting that boundary after so many years of putting up with her toxicity. Claire called me the next day to tell me she understood my decision but hoped I could forgive Mom eventually, and I told her I loved her and had no problem with her, but that my decision about my mom was final. About 6 months passed without any contact with my mom, and they were honestly the most peaceful 6 months I'd had in years. And like I could breathe without constantly waiting for the next critical comment or the next time she'd try to undermine my authority as a mother. Liam stopped asking about his grandmother after the first few weeks, and I focused on building a stable life for the two of us, with Patricia helping me with childcare, with my job going well, with a routine that worked. Then Liam's birthday came. He turned 5, and I threw a small party with some kids from his daycare and their parents. And everything was going perfect until a huge package arrived with the logo from an expensive toy store. It was from my mom, obviously, and inside there were like $500 worth of toys, clothes, and a box of special cookies that supposedly were organic and healthy. But when I read the ingredients, they had almonds. I mean, literally one of Liam's main allergens. It included a card that said, "For my beloved grandson, I miss you so much. I hope you enjoy these gifts, Grandma Beatrice." I got so angry I started shaking. Like, how was it possible that after everything that had happened, she still sent food that could kill my son? Claire called me that day to tell me Mom had been planning that gift for weeks, that she was trying to reconnect. And I told her that if Mom really wanted to reconnect, she'd start by not sending literally poison in a pretty box. My mom started a campaign with relatives saying I was a cruel mother who wouldn't let her see her grandson, that I was inventing or exaggerating Liam's allergies, that my hippie vegan lifestyle was what was making my son sick. Some relatives I didn't even know well started sending me messages, telling me I should forgive my mom, that family is most important, that children need their grandmothers. One of my mom's aunts, Joyce, got to the point of showing up at my work to talk to me about the situation, and I had to ask security to remove her because she refused to leave and was making a scene in the reception area. I returned all the gifts to my mom's address with a note that simply said, "We don't want or need anything from you. Please respect my decision to have no contact." She sent me like 20 text messages after that, alternating between pleas for me to forgive her and attacks on my character and my abilities as a mother. I blocked her from my phone, blocked her from all social media, told Patricia that under no circumstances should she let my mom near Liam, and basically tried to build a wall between her and us. Claire kept trying to mediate, like she'd tell me mom was depressed, that she cried all the time, that I was the only one who could fix this. And I had to explain very clearly to her that it wasn't my responsibility to fix the relationship with someone who had repeatedly shown she didn't respect basic safety boundaries with my child. I told Claire I loved her but needed her to stop pressuring me about this, that my priority was Liam and his well-being, not our mother's feelings. Things calmed down for a few more months, and then came a cousin's wedding, a big wedding like with 200 guests at a super elegant venue. I hesitated a lot about going because I knew my mom would be there, but the cousin and I had always been close, and she'd made it very clear she wanted me there and would do everything possible to make me feel comfortable. I told her I'd go, but that if my mom tried to approach me or Liam, I'd leave immediately. And she said she understood and had talked to my mom about keeping her distance. The ceremony was beautiful and everything went normally. My mom was on the other side of the venue with Claire and other relatives, and I stayed at my table with Liam and Patricia, who came with me as support. But during the reception, when everyone was dancing and distracted, my mom approached my table. I saw her coming and grabbed Liam's hand preparing to leave, but she started crying right there, like a loud, dramatic cry that made people around turn to look at us. She said out loud so everyone could hear that she just wanted to see her grandson, that I was cruel for keeping him away from her, that she'd made mistakes but didn't deserve this punishment. People started looking at us and murmuring, and I felt super uncomfortable but kept my calm and told her in a low voice that this wasn't the place or time to please leave us alone. She threw herself on the floor dramatically, literally let herself fall to her knees, and kept crying and begging. And I thought, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to participate in this show. So I grabbed Liam, who was super scared seeing his grandmother like that, signaled to Patricia, and we left the wedding. Claire called me like 20 times that night, but I didn't answer because I was too angry and upset, and just wanted to put Liam to bed and process what had happened. A few days later, Claire showed up at my apartment and said we needed to talk about Mom, that things had gotten out of control. She told me that after the wedding, Mom had had what seemed to be a complete nervous breakdown, that she'd been saying things that didn't make sense, that she wasn't sleeping, that she'd stopped taking care of her personal hygiene. Claire had called an ambulance and Mom had been taken to the hospital where finally, after years, she was evaluated by a psychiatrist. They diagnosed her with severe bipolar disorder that apparently had been untreated for decades, probably since my dad's death or even before. Claire told me this with tears in her eyes, like expecting me to feel guilt or to run to the hospital to see Mom, but honestly, I just felt a mixture of sadness for her and relief at finally having an explanation for her erratic behavior over so many years. I asked Claire if Mom was receiving treatment, and she said yes, that she'd been admitted to a mental health institution in another state where she has family who can visit her regularly, that she'd probably be there for several months while they stabilized her medication and worked on her therapy. I told Claire I hoped Mom received the help she needed, but that didn't change my decision about contact, that the diagnosis explained some things, but didn't excuse the danger she'd put Liam in or the years of emotionally abusive treatment. Claire seemed to understand better this time, like she didn't try to convince me to forgive or reconnect anymore. She just hugged me and said she supported me and respected my decision. It's been like 8 months since Mom was admitted, and according to Claire, she's better with medication but still has a lot of work to do in therapy. She sent me some letters through Claire, letters where she apologizes and says she understands why I made the decision I made, and I read them but don't respond because, honestly, I don't know what to say. Part of me feels sorry for her, like she was a sick person without treatment for so long, but another part of me, the part that's Liam's mom, Can't forget that she endangered his life and that even after that she continued not respecting basic boundaries. Liam is fine now. He's growing and he's a super sweet and happy kid despite all the dietary restrictions. Like he's learned to read labels with me and understands that his body is different but not less special. He hardly asks about his grandmother anymore. And when he does, I simply tell him that Grandma Beatrice is sick and that she's in a place where they're helping her feel better, which is the truth. And he seems to accept it without much drama. Last week we were making vegan pancakes in the kitchen. Saturdays, we always make pancakes. And Liam asked me if someday Grandma Beatrice would be able to come eat pancakes with us. I stood there thinking for a moment while flipping a pancake and told him I didn't know, that maybe someday in the future when she's better and we're ready, but that for now, we were fine like this. Just the two of us. He got thoughtful and then said, "That's okay, Mommy. I like our pancakes anyway." And he gave me a sticky hug because he had his hands full of batter. And that's enough for now, I guess.